Do you ever wish you could be a fly on the wall for conversations between successful women entrepreneurs in different industries?
That's exactly what Breaking Even Better podcast is.
Every week, we'll share raw,
Real,
and unfiltered insights from our experiences scaling our businesses
and helping others do the same.
Welcome back to Breaking Even Better, the podcast where we get real about the challenges of running a business, the good, the bad, and for today, the brutally awkward. My name is Trish Saemann, and I'm here with my powerhouse co-hosts who've had their fair share of uncomfortable conversations, Miss Carolina Aponte and Miss Brenda Harris.
hello, hola.
Hola. So Carolina.
You're a fractional CFO.
You're a
over
fractional
here.
CFO, Hall of Fame business leader and finance guru who makes numbers make sense rather than ignoring them. That's what I do, except when Carolina talks to me. And then, of course, there's Miss Brenda Harris, coming from the healthcare staffing world, where she has had her fair share of tough conversations, hiring, firing, making sure people actually show up for the damn jobs. And of course, me, I'm a digital marketing expert, and just explaining what SEO is to people can be a difficult conversation in and of itself, but make no mistake, I've had to have the awkward conversations where I may have lost my sanity and maybe even my soul. I'm not sure. So if you haven't clued in already, today's topic is going to be on difficult conversations.
All
So-
right. And together,
Yes,
we will bring you the no BS,
no BS.
truth about what it really takes to run a business without sugarcoating it.
True story. So let's get into it right now. So one of my favorite authors is Tim Ferriss, and he said, a person's success in life can usually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. So let's just jump into it. Have you guys ever had any awkward conversations?
Never.
Never.
Not at one time.
I don't do awkward. I don't do awkward.
Well, I think, between personal life, awkward conversations with employees, awkward conversations with clients, awkward conversations with vendors, like it seems to be kind of the menu for the day.
It really does. So I would love to talk a little bit about examples of awkward conversations we have. Now, Brenda, I know that you don't love your awkward conversations. It makes you feel uncomfortable. I think it does for all of us. Do you have any examples in your own life of awkward conversations that you have? And we can keep names to a minimum to protect the guilty if you want.
Oh, wow. So for me, my personality type is I'm pretty bottom line. I need bottom line information. If I feel like I want to ask more questions, I'm going to ask more questions. You don't have to just tell me what I need. Tell me what it needs to be done, and I'll handle it from there, right? So one of the awkward conversations I have, I love my husband. I do, but he likes to explain everything, and his explanation goes about 30 minutes. And you lost me after the first. I'm like, babe, just what's the bottom line?
Right.
What's the bottom line? And if I need more, I ask for more.
Right.
That's an everyday thing. That's a light one. In business, my awkward conversations does come with the hiring and firing, or even with the hospital sometimes. Because people's personalities are different, and I may have placed a nurse in the department that the people just may not like her,
Right.
or like her personality, or somebody's personality clash. Then they come back, well, you need to talk to her about this. And then she goes and tells me, or he or she goes and tells me, that they just don't like me, or they have something against me. They don't like the way I walk. They don't like the way I wear a jacket all day, just something. And I'm like, okay, my job is to have those conversations with the hospital. I don't want the clinicians to argue with them, right?
Right.
So I always tell them every time, let me handle that. You tell me and I handle it. So I go back to the hospital with a little tact.
Right.
Right? I do have another person. She is so much more tactful than me. My tact is still kind of terse and blunt and bottom line, but it's followed by facts, right? So, and then don't let me start quoting the contract.
Right.
Because per this section, that, because they do it to me.
Right.
When something don't go their way, they want to, did you read this part of the contract? I do the same thing.
Right.
And typically, it kind of fades away, like they don't respond back. So I'm like, we good over
Right.
here. That's how it typically goes that way. I mean, we all are human,
Mm-hmm.
and communication is a two-way thing, the person giving it and the person receiving
Right.
it. So I try to be as a matter of fact as possible, especially with business. I don't want to make it too personal
Sure.
where you feel like you're gonna walk over me, because I'm not gonna do you like that.
Right.
And I know one of the I sent my employees to California for a conference,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the people who ran the conference said, "She's so intense." And it was like, no, she's just by the book.
Right. Right.
And I was like, I like that. Tell them to talk more about me.
Right.
But I have awkward conversations with them, right? I have
Right.
to have those conversations, but I try to keep it professional, but also matter of fact.
Right.
So, I mean, I have more. I don't want to.
Oh,
I
no.
don't want to. I don't
We
want to
all
tell
got
these.
'em.
Wow.
We all
this.
got
I
'em.
have
Yeah.
the race thing.
Yeah.
I have when I went to a vendor, trying to become a partner with this company,
Mhm.
and all he wanted to do is look at my boobs,
Oh, boy.
and I'm like,
Well,
Well,
I'm
eyes
up
up
here.
here. Up
That's
here.
tricky. I
Yeah.
mean, in fairness, they're impressive, but he should still keep his. He should keep his eyes off them, though, just from an
Right.
impressive, from a professional standpoint.
Right.
So I'd love to kind of like narrow it down too, and let's talk about when one of our teammates, one of the people that are under our tutelage as leaders, they're not meeting expectations, or the way they're speaking to a client isn't getting it done, or they're a bad fit in the company. Like they're not meeting expectations either with clients, with the team, or they're just not getting their work done. Have you guys run into that? Like, Carolina,
I mean,
I'll come to you on this one.
It's a kind of like standard in running a business
It
is,
is. It
dealing with your
is.
employees, and you're like, but boo, like we told you how things needed to go,
Right.
and how you needed to communicate with clients, and what the deadlines were, like what happened. So
Right.
the awkward conversation for me in terms of employees is I also to Brenda's point, I'm very straightforward. I don't sugarcoat anything. I call things for what they are,
Right.
and it can be perceived as intimidating to some,
Right.
and to others is like, oh, she's a witch.
Right.
But I go straight to the point. Like, here are the facts. This happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened. I want to hear your side of the story.
Right.
So I always give the opportunity to the person to like say what why this happened. Because
Right.
I only know this part of the equation.
Right.
And if I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to need your side of the story to be informed and decide whether you did the right thing or you did the wrong thing. So one example, one particular employee, she was in charge of running payroll for a number of clients. And there was a switch between the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. And she did not make the change.
That's a huge mess.
Yay! Huge mess. So I walk into the office, and my the office manager is like, so we need to talk. And I'm like, oh crap,
Right.
what happened? So then she gives me the version of the story, and I'm like, I'm already like sweating, because I'm like, so I'm the one who's gonna have to face the client
Right.
and explain what this mistake is. And it wasn't a few dollars. Let's just say it was in the six figure.
Oh gosh.
Lord.
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh, that makes my stomach hurt for you.
I was sweating. I was like, I didn't know. I was like, but the office manager, she looks at me, she said, I've already called the payroll company to put a stop to it. But it's gonna show up as if it's happened, but they're not gonna get the money out of the account.
Right.
I'm like, okay, at least
that's not.
that happened, right?
Right.
But she wasn't the one who did the mistake. It was this other employee. So I had to talk to that employee to find out, my girl, how did you not notice this?
Right.
Because it wasn't a small number. And people get defensive.
Sure.
And okay, fine, you get defensive, but how are we going to solve this? And how are we going to prevent this from happening again?
Right.
How would you recommend I approach the client? on your behalf. So now I'm putting it on the
Sure.
person because in order to, I feel as a leader,
Right.
you don't just sweep things under a rug
Nope.
or you handle it all yourself.
Right.
You teach
That's right.
your people, okay, what are the consequences of the mistakes that you're making and how would you solve it?
Right.
And if you don't have a solution, we need to rethink our relationship.
That's right.
And so that was a very difficult conversation. The problem was resolved by the end of the day, but I had a headache and I knew that this person now had a situation that I'm going to have to eventually phase out.
Right. Because that's looked like it could end up being more of a chronic problem.
Yeah.
Is your healthcare facility constantly scrambling to fill shifts? If so, it is time to stop the madness. BPN Staffing Solutions is your secret weapon, connecting top-tier nurses and clinical professionals with hospitals and clinics that demand excellence. With rapid replacements, rigorous vetting, and a commitment to quality, BPN does more than just fill positions. They build reliable teams. If staffing is your pain point, BPN is your solution. Visit bpnstaffing.com today. BPN Staffing Solutions, where top talent meets peace of mind.
So I can share a quick story where I was actually on the receiving end of being led. So this was before I owned Go Beyond, and this was I was a manager, but I was a young manager. I managed a large staff of 40 wait staff. My boss came to me and said, "We're getting some complaints about one of the staff members, and you're going to need to talk to them." I said, "Okay, who is it?" And he's like, "This is her name, blah, blah." I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'll talk to her." He's like, "Have you run into any issues?" I'm like, "She doesn't really blend well with the team. And, she's a little slow, but she'll work hard in the back end. There's some areas where she's strong." And he goes, "Do you spend any time near her?" And I said, "Near her?" And he's like, "There's a hygiene problem." So, yeah. So I had to have a conversation with another grown woman who's younger than me, but another grown woman about her hygiene.
Oh, wow.
Well, you want to talk awkward. So it was such an interesting thing because I was wondering why my boss wouldn't do it.
I will be here with soap,
Right,
deodorant, and all of the
Right, so-
toiletries.
I would be like, let's
and I'll be
go.
handing it. I have a gift for you.
Right. And it's funny because you talk about having to be bottom line, and that is something that's like very personal. So
Right.
like about
Yeah.
as personal as
have
it gets.
to.
So there's a
Right.
degree of sensitivity that's required. And when I tell you that I was wringing my hands about this
Oh, yeah.
conversation, I did not want to have this. And it was a bit of a chronic issue. It was not like they had an off day or something like that. So, and we were in food service. So like you really had to have, so it was a very interesting, so the reason why I share that story is because I learned from the leader where he said, he's like, there's a couple of things. One, person who's in question is female. I feel like this should come from a woman. And I said, that's fair, understandable. And then he kind of coached me through, he's like, you've got to be to the point. You can be sensitive, but to the point. He's like, and I know you're going to dance around it. He's like, don't do that. And my personality is not that I'm not blunt and joke. If it's really sensitive, I do kind of struggle with, but sugarcoating it is not, you think you're doing them a favor. You're not.
Right.
Rip the Band-Aid off,
Yeah.
just jump right into it.
Absolutely.
Especially if you have like a staff member that's, in this case, underperforming in that they weren't cleaning themselves. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's impacting everybody
It impacts
else.
everybody else, and it impacts my job and the experience of the people that we were serving, which was,
Right.
people that were in the restaurant and stuff
Right.
like that. So it's really, really tricky. So I'm glad that we all kind of, do you have an awkward conversation that you want to share with regards to like an employee or
I
anything
do
like that?
have one with an employee. So it was an interview. So I've learned that I don't do the interviews any longer.
Right.
So actually she had got hired. The staff had hired her. So I'm about to do the presentation that I mentioned on an earlier podcast. I have a presentation that I do that only I do, and it tells everything about the business, everything from the communication tools, where we post jobs, what exactly we do, what we stand for, all that. So she comes in for that. So this is her first time meeting me, right? First impressions of everything.
Right.
Why she come in there with this little terry cloth outfit that looked like she just rolled off of the sofa
Oh boy.
and some clogs. And I'm looking like, what is going on here?
Right.
And then her hair was like untamed. And I kind of got that because, people do that these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was trying not to be very critical, but I couldn't get past the rolling off the sofa look.
Right.
I'm not there. So I'm like, do we even think about what we were coming? It's good to meet you. It's our first time meeting.
Right. I can't imagine.
Like, what is going on? I said, did they talk to you about the dress code? And she was like, well, they said it was casual. I said business casual.
Right. Business casual, not pajamas casual.
Lounging in your
Not
sofa
loungewear
casual?
by no
Right.
means. Business casual. I said, first impressions means a lot to me. And this isn't a good one.
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she have her phone on the table, slicing through things. I said, do you have somewhere you need to be? You
Right.
can go.
Right. I'm in the middle of a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Like, real talk. I'm like, you can leave. Oh, no, they tell me my car is ready. I'm like, why don't you go pick up your car?
Mm-hmm.
Go
And why
do
don't you
that.
drive it back
All
home and
the
find
way
a way
home.
find a new job.
Whatever you did.
Oh, my gosh.
Go do all of that. And let's try this again another day. Call me and we'll discuss.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point is when I have issues with my employees, I do a performance improvement plan.
Sure.
And everything I do, I write down what I feel like the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, or like he said, I'll ask them, what do you think about that?
Right.
What do you have anything to say about what I said? Typically they say, no, you was right on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, so we got to fix this.
Right.
30 days, we got to fix it because we can't continue like this. Even this year, I said, we can't do what we did in 2024 and 2025.
That's
we just
right.
can't. So when I have those hard decisions, I try to, again, make it factual. I have the stuff on the paper. I let them read it, let them give me their feedback with, oh, girl, with the pajamas on. She was out of there.
Right.
She was out of there. That was a waste of my morning.
Right.
I'm like, no. I'm like, and I couldn't even be rude because I was so shocked that you even had the audacity to come in here like that, right? So I'm like, what? Did somebody discuss the dress code?
I think there's a threshold though. That feels like again, like basic hygiene, what you wear to work. You feel like most people have an understanding of what at least the threshold is.
You would
the
think.
first day, though.
You would think.
I'm saying.
But I think that's one of the things that we as business owners have to face is not everybody has the same standards. Not
right.
everybody believes in the things that we believe in.
That's
Not
right.
everybody has a work ethic. To me, it's like showing up. You just got hired. You're gonna show up like you rolled out of bed. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right.
How are you going to then be a good employee for me
Right.
if you can't even get your ish
Yes,
together?
this woman's name is on the bottom of your paycheck.
Right.
And you gonna come in there like that? I'm like, the audacity.
Right.
And you don't go
yeah.
somewhere. And the pulling out the phone gave me an excuse
Oh.
to make her leave.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, you thought it was you. No, it's me. You can go do whatever's on that phone.
That's right.
Go handle that.
Right.
That's right.
Because what you're not gonna do is stay here.
Right.
The disrespect. I don't get it. I don't get
No, I don't
it.
get
Sometimes
it.
people say it's a generational thing.
Right.
I'm gonna disagree with that. I think
I'm
it
with you,
has
Carolina.
to do a lot more with your upbringing and your own set of standards as a human being than
I think it's
generation.
self-awareness too. I think there's a self-awareness of how you show up in the world. I don't always think that it's tied to generational. I will say that, the generation that falls into the boomer category versus say your Gen Z, the standard for what looks appropriate is a little bit different, but appropriate is still appropriate.
Correct.
And I don't necessarily think, yes, things are a bit more casual. We're not wearing 3-piece suits to the office, if there even is an office.
Excuse me.
You look lovely, yes. But could you imagine showing up to work in 82 in jeans?
No.
It just,
Right.
that just wasn't the way things were.
no,
so what's
absolutely.
acceptable is kind of like a collective, and you have to be self-aware of your role in the community, if you will. And it sounds like, this young woman that you were talking about really just didn't have an awareness.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this because it has to be said at one point or another. I feel like because when she interviewed with the staff, and I have a mixed staff, so it's
Mhm.
not a racial situation.
Right.
But I feel like she just felt that comfortable. Now they don't dress like that.
Right.
I still don't get that part to today. They don't dress like that. They do have business casual.
Sure.
Like nobody's wearing slacks every day.
Right.
But they're not wearing tights and sweat clothes like that.
Right.
Right.
And they're not showing up in
being
jeans and flip
presentable.
flops and a torn T-shirt. It's
Right,
different.
no.
Right.
And so I'm like, is she? Who is it that interviewed her to make her feel like that? Because I know they didn't even wear that during the interview. I have that
Right.
much faith in them. So I'm like, okay, so she just I don't know what she read. Whatever
Right.
she read wrong. And she didn't have a job.
Right.
And back to the line. But
Right.
I'm like, dude, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Why would you make this your first impression? I
Right.
can see if that was day 2 and she was like, oh, I didn't understand the dress code. No, this is day 1.
Day one.
The fact that she grabbed her phone shows again a
Yeah.
lack of awareness.
lack
It'd be
of
one thing if
awareness,
it was just the
totally.
clothing. It's another thing when you bring in the phone piece of it.
But
Like,
I needed that because otherwise I probably would have lost my scruples at one
Right.
point. I'm like, girl, just go home. The phone,
did you a solid on that,
The
yeah.
phone helped me.
right.
Right. You're like, yeah, go ahead and take it.
You need to go ahead and handle
No, yeah, why
whatever's
don't you go-
going on.
Go handle that mess.
And we'll talk about this another time.
That's
Like,
right.
don't come back.
So let's switch gears for a second. So let's flip it a little bit. Rather than just staff, like what happens when you need to let a client go?
Oh gosh.
Client?
Because I know that I have
I
I
too.
have fired clients. I can even remember the first client I fired with Go Beyond, the first one I fired.
Shoot, I remember when I got fired for the first time. Oh my God. I think I was in shock a day or two when they fired me. I was like, it just stung. It took me by shock. I didn't understand what was going on. So I tried to reach back out to them to figure out what happened, thinking it was me. But I feel like if they could have been just more clear on the reason they did it, they lost the contract. Not just me losing the contract, it's that they lost it. Therefore, I don't have to work with them anymore
Right.
because there's nothing else to do.
Right.
And so, but the clarity wasn't there, which is why I got fired. So for those couple days that I was stressing, it really wasn't me at the end of the day when I thought it was. We always need to be clear on what we're communicating when we do have those difficult decisions, because if, like, the girl might not know she didn't dress right. I think she knew by the time I finished with her. But I didn't know why they fired me until a few days later when I figured it out. I just need clarity. Clarity is going to take us through the whole thing.
Agreed.
So when is it time to fire a client and have that conversation? I know my girl Trish here wrote a book
I did.
called
Get More Clients You Love.
That's Right. And I use it because I learned quite a few things about getting the right clients so that I don't have to fire them. But breaking up with a client is much harder than people realize. Sometimes you outgrow them and you just have to face the reality. Other times it's the other way around. They outgrow you. I just had this happen to me. And I share that story
Yes.
about that. One client in particular, she fired me
Right.
after 12 years.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking.
It was, but it was bittersweet at the same time because I think she handled that difficult conversation in a very good way.
Right.
Where she started with, look how much we both have grown.
Right.
Our businesses and our relationships as friends and individuals. And now my business is at this level and I just need to use a different approach.
Right.
Right.
And I was like, okay, let me go redo my budget.
Right. It's very bittersweet because I ran into this with a law firm, and it was funny because we were working with them. They grew really, really fast. Then they're like, yeah, so we're going to bring it in house. We're going to do all of our marketing in house. And they did. And about 4 months later, we're like, so isn't it fun? And this guy said this, I have the email too. Isn't it fun when a client lets you go and then they come back and they're like, so we were wrong. Like, I didn't need to again.
Oh, that's the best.
Right. Yeah. So that was great. And then they ended up opening up another location and they ended up with 15 lawyers. So they did bring the whole thing in house. What they did was they hired somebody, and I felt bad for the girl. Actually, she was fresh out of college, and he really thought that was going to replace the entire team. I was like, okay, so that was fun. But conversely, like letting clients go, I remember the first client I let go. I should have let go way sooner than I did. And one of the issues that I was having with him was he was telling us how to do what we do. So his business was I don't want to be too descriptive because it's very specific and he is local. So I don't want to insult him, even though I think you're a big fat jerk. So I don't want to say who it is, but he's a big fat jerk. Anyway, he was a photographer, but a very specific kind of photographer. And he's like, listen, I have a visual medium and my website needs to be visual. And I said, that's no problem. Keep in mind, this is about 12 years ago. So I'm like, that's no problem. However, it can't be only visual. You need to have text on your website. And he's like, no, you're wrong. My people will not appreciate any text. They only want the images. I said, and that's great, except you want to get found by those people, right? And Google does not read images. Nowadays, it reads it a little bit better. Like there's AI, you can read the images.
Right.
But then you needed something called an alt image tag, meaning you needed to tag all of those pictures with whatever the picture was of, because that's the only thing. The robots don't see pictures. They only see text. So anyway, he's telling me this. I'm telling him he's wrong. And then he's holding us accountable for an outcome that he's not letting us achieve.
Right.
So this was such a, talk about crazy, awkward conversations. I'm like, so I don't think we're a good fit. I think I need to let you go. He's like, no, he's like, you're going to stay with me. And I'm like, so I don't think it's a good fit. He's like, no, we're going to continue. And I said, okay. I was like, well, I can't be held accountable for the outcome then. He goes, well, then what am I paying you for? And I'm like, well, see about that. I don't want you to pay me anymore because I don't think we should work together. And like it went back. I remember this so distinctly. I'm driving on 77 South and I'm about to get onto 485. And I'm like, this guy won't like let me fire him. So then like a week later, he's like, I just want to let you know that I don't think we should work together anymore. I'm like, did you come to that all by yourself? So but
he wanted to have the last word.
Yes, he wanted to fire me. So I'm like, okay. He's like, well, I just want to let you know that I don't think we should work together anymore. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you have anything to say? I'm like, nope, sure don't. So it was I was like, wow. And it was definitely a lesson on like how to like be more definitive and when you let a client go. Right. But that was the first time I'd ever done that before. I had never, I was like, can you fire clients? Is that like a thing? And I certainly have countless stories, one of whom also local, which is the true inspiration behind the book.
Yes.
And if you're interested, you can read the first chapter on Amazon and you'll see why, because this fool. This fool. So very happy to not work with him anymore. But many an awkward conversation has had to happen. And then I've also had ones that were gentler, where this one in particular, having a conversation, she just didn't understand what we did. And we're producing results for her. And she still just didn't understand. She's like, yeah, but they're not my clients yet. I'm like, so I'm not your sales team. I'm your marketing team. I'm bringing you leads. And I went too far. I was like, what's your onboarding process? Like, I'm trying to help her with her operational situation.
Yeah, no.
So, but here's the lesson I learned from it though, is that when I do engage with somebody, now I ask, so what's your intake process? Because if I'm going to be held accountable, well, this isn't making me any money. It's like, well, I'm not your sales team. I'm only to bring you leads. Right. And if you are fumbling the ball in the end zone, you can't blame the quarterback for that. You know what I mean? So, so that was, but I had to have a gentler conversation. I said, I don't think you're quite ready for this. And now a lot of times I can vet them well in advance before I know that they're going to be a good client or not.
Yeah. And I think that's also what our audience needs to know is like, all of these things typically happen at the beginning, the first few years you're in business. Right. And then after a while, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I already know 5 minutes into a conversation, this is not going to be a good fit for us.
That's right.
We don't need to entertain because I can already tell just based on how people answer, based on their attitude and other series of things. And then you're like, so I don't have to fire as many clients. That's right. As I felt I needed to do, 5 years ago. Right. I've had to let clients go for various reasons. One of them being I don't agree with doing unethical things.
Well, certainly that. Yeah, no doubt.
And my name and my reputation is a lot more important than a few dollars.
Absolutely.
So I'm not gonna play.
That's right.
And so I'm going to let that go. And you go do your thing somewhere else. I don't need to know, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Right.
So I've had to have the conversation of like, we're just not a good fit for you. You need a different type of provider.
Right.
And that's not me.
I'm not the one.
And I'm not the one. So I've had that. I've also had a conversation with a client that's been with me for a long time, a very needy client. And because we have grown the business, well, our attention,
Right.
it's not necessarily as,
I just went through this too.
you know, like
Yeah.
you don't have as much time to dedicate to this very needy person. And I had to like talk to the team came to me and they're like, oh my God, the number
Right.
of calls and the number of emails, like, what are
Right.
we doing? I was like, okay, I
Right.
will handle this and gently let her know that we are no longer a good fit for her business.
Right. Or her neediness,
Right,
which you can't
right,
put
but
it that
I
way.
couldn't put it that way,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
and I also like her as an individual, but
Sure.
like I can't really tell her, God, you're so freaking needy.
Right.
So I had the conversation and I said, we really are at a point where we feel you need different type of service.
Right.
You need somebody who's got more time to answer all of your questions. And unfortunately, we're not there anymore.
Right.
And she's like, how much more money do you want?
Right.
Literally.
Well, it's important because if they're taking your time, they've got to pay
Well,
for
and
your
that was
time.
that was
Right.
the main reason. I was like, I can't have my team spend this much time in this account because they're not paying enough money.
Right.
But then she literally said, how much more money do you want me to pay you? I don't want to go.
Did
and
you
I-
have a figure in mind?
No, I just pull it literally out of my, you know what?
Right. Right.
And I said, okay, it's going to be X number. And she's like, okay. And I was like, oh, she's staying on board.
Oh, we gotta make some more time.
That's right.
It's been 2 years.
Wow. Well, and I don't think that situation comes up often. So, I mean, it speaks to the relationship. It speaks to how much she really valued your service. But at the same time, you could have just let her go. And yet I'm really glad that she did ask you, like, how much more would this be? Because it does speak that she's probably a business owner too. Like, she
Right.
gets it.
Right.
But they're not going to just offer it.
No.
You know
and
what I mean?
that's
Like, you have to kind of like take it away.
It
for her.
caught me off guard because
Right.
I was not expecting that. I had never seen that happen
Right.
before. Where like, how much more money? I mean, it happened to me in one job
Right.
where I quit, and my boss at the time
Sure.
said, "How much more money do you want?" I was like, "Well, like it's not money. I'm leaving the state."
Right.
And he's like, "What do you mean?"
Right.
The real reason.
Yeah, the real reason I'm leaving.
Right.
But to have a client come back and say that, well, you know, yeah, it sort of, you know, humbled me a little bit. And also proved that my team had been doing such a good job
Yeah.
that she was willing to, you know, pay additional money to
Yeah.
stay with us.
No, that's huge.
I have this one where I had to realize that this client wasn't good for me. This is what I was working with a skilled facility, nursing home. They didn't pay regularly. Like they pay when they wanted to pay. When somebody found the invoice somewhere and they was like, "Oh, this needs to be paid."
Oh, that
So-
kills your cash flow too.
Right.
When you're counting on money.
And then if anybody is in staffing, in leadership and staffing, they know that a lot of places want to say, "Oh, we're doing away with temporary work or staffing. We're gonna just do it in house." Okay, good luck,
Right.
because it's a shortage, and that's
Right.
that's where we come in, right?
Right.
So the same nursing home that don't pay on time done racked up like $900 in late fees.
Just in late fees.
In late fees. And I'm like, there's like, "Oh, we're doing away with staff." And I'm like, okay, well, the last invoice is your late fee for not paying. I say, so once you pay that, then we're all clear. So they said they never paid it. They never paid it. This was in March, April-ish. Come December. "Oh, we need some help during the holidays." I said, "Well, you got that invoice that I sent you back in April?"
Right.
Because I'm not helping you
Right.
if you can't do what you're supposed to do. Needless to say, I refuse to work with people like that or
Right.
companies like that. So now that's more automated where the
Right.
invoices go out weekly, and if you don't pay, we're going to start hounding you, which
Right.
is what the company does, hounding you in 30 days. And then after 30 days, then you starting to get daily emails. Somebody's going to send something at some point.
Right.
And it ain't going to be no long-term time frame where you're not paying me.
Right.
Because I done paid these nurses
Right.
the week after they start.
Right,
So pay me
right.
my money.
Right.
Yeah, we get paid in advance. Like we're on a there are people like, oh, do net 30 or do 60. Nope. No, I will not. So we are in advance. Like if you pay me in December, it's for December's work.
Okay, gotcha.
So I have my team, but then there's also like my vendors and stuff like that. They get paid for December's work January 1. So like
Right.
I'm already paid for the stuff that because I don't ever like being
Right.
I don't like being upside down. I don't
Right.
like that ever. So and not only that, but the nature of what I do, I can't pull a nurse.
Mhm,
Like we're
mhm.
already, it's done. Once
Right.
it's done,
The work
it's
is
done.
done,
I
right.
can't
Right.
repo the
Right.
work that we've done. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's the same thing in my business. Like we do auto drafts first of the month.
First of the month.
First of the month, that money's coming out. I'm not collecting. I'm not in a collection
If I have to
agency.
chase you down.
You sign an agreement. We're doing our part. You
Right.
gotta pay. The credit card doesn't go through or the bank account doesn't go through. Somebody's gonna reach out and say, "Hey, we need a new card."
Right.
Otherwise, we're not doing any more work.
Yeah. Same thing with our like our websites. Most of the time, my hard costs are covered in their deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
sometimes there's extra stuff. But like in other words, if they don't pay on the back end,
Right.
I'm out my profit, but I'm not out my
Cost.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I did that on purpose because you learn that lesson once the hard way.
Yeah,
Like,
for
"Ah,
sure.
damn it. So run into that. But getting back to like costs and stuff like that. So here's another awkward conversation is raising the rates.
Yeah.
So like so I actually just went through this with one of my clients. Their website, we were talking about Shopify in a previous episode. The nature of this client, what they do, they can't use Shopify. Shopify has there's certain industries that Shopify just doesn't like to work with. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Yeah.
Is that what we're talking
yeah,
about?
it's like CBD and stuff like that. Yes. So, which I don't take issue with. However, you let your freak flag fly. You want to,
whatever.
that's up to you. I got no issue with that. But, and I certainly don't have an issue with working with a company like that. I personally think it should be legal, but we can have that conversation another day. And
Legal
technically
or
it is
illegal?
legal. No, legal. I think it should
Legal.
be legal. Yeah. But Shopify doesn't like it typically. So I think
Right.
it's okay right now, but then they could change their mind and then we would build their whole site in Shopify
Right.
and then be like, never mind. So we're like, all right. So we had to Franken-site this site. The couple that runs this, delightful people. They're very, very nice. But man, was this was such a challenging site because there were so many integrations that are native in some. So I had to have a conversation with them about their SEO. And they got mad at me because the price really did go up. And in fairness to them, it was a big leap from what they were originally paying, but now they have 3 locations. I had not raised their prices in years, and we had to rebuild their site. What we thought was going to take 3 months took closer to 9 months, which they were pissed about that too. But it wasn't like we weren't doing it. It was just, there was just so many other integrations that came into play. So I had to have like a hard conversation. So now they're like, look, we love you, but we can't, you got to meet us in the middle or something. So I'm actually supposed to have that conversation next week. I'm like, I can't go in the hole because you're mad at me. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do it's not my fault. And not only that, but in this market, there are so many other shops that have opened up. Like their like the amount of labor we have to do just to get them ranked is going to be a lot harder. So the website will make it easier because the website's designed for that now. But it does get a little tricky. And they were like, but usually my clients don't usually get pissed because most of the time when I raise the prices, it's yearly. And it's usually like at the end of the year, like, hey, so 2024 is over, 2025 is beginning. You should see an increase on your invoice by X amount %. And usually I do the math first to see like how much. I'm like, I don't know, 5%. Like, are you just trying to figure out? How much more do I need to make from each of these clients? And
Such a great way to calculate things.
Right.
Let me see.
5%.
I
Do you think I'll
think.
go for that? So hope they like that. But that's usually how I do it. And my prices they're not published anywhere either. So sometimes the price goes up and nobody knows the price went up.
Right.
Because what I built a website for 7 years ago is certainly not what I built for it now. So yeah, what about you guys? What do you do with regards to pricing and stuff like that?
Well, I mentioned mine earlier that most of mine, on the hospital aspect, they have their preset prices, right? But the ones that I have a good relationship with, I kind of keep it in the same range, but I add whatever I need to make what I need to make. So that's where I kind of can have my little cushion a little bit better because I can get a higher bill rate from them. But the hospitals is set. They're not budging too much.
Right.
We can complain, we can fuss, but they're not budging. So we don't have as much autonomy on a bunch of rate changes.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the staff, I want to make sure we still are known. We've always been known to pay one of the companies that pay the highest, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay very competitive in that area.
Yeah.
But the only one I can kind of pad is the direct relationships.
Right.
For me, it's a little bit on the we're adding this services or we're now doing these things for you. So our price now is going to be X.
Right.
Or having the conversation of doing a review, an annual review. And I just had this happen 2 weeks ago. This client started with us when it was a startup.
Mm-hmm.
Literally him and his wife.
Right.
And obviously bookkeeping services was very cheap because
Sure.
they're
Not doing much.
hardly had any transactions,
Right.
whatever. Fast forward 5 years, hot them.
Right. Right.
It's like, whoo, first of all, what did you do and how did you get all this money?
Right.
But anyways, just the volume has
Right.
increased tremendously. And not only the volume, but the level of detail that is now required based on their offerings and how they've grown their business. And the
Right.
team has grown. Their team has grown. So I had to sit down and say, okay, so this is great. And I love it for you. But you know what this means.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, your price is going up.
That is correct.
I was
But
like,
you already know.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
okay, so we don't need to be awkward about this.
Right.
Now I know, you know, but that is somebody, obviously, a client that appreciates and values what we do.
Sure.
But I had to start the conversation with that. We're like,
Right.
so
Right.
I'm so happy for you.
It is. It's a great one. And most of the time, if you have clients that kind of get it, they know because you're not the only price that's going up, and their prices are probably going up depending on what they do. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also like the relationship that you build with your clients that also makes the conversation less awkward.
Right.
If you don't really have a good connection or relationship, yeah, having that conversation is going to be really awkward.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my old insurance company. I've been with them for like 5 years. Paying. And when my insurance went from, I think it was 6,000 to 16,000.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, for what?
Right.
First of all, I don't never have no claims. So
Right.
why are you just taking
Right.
taking my money?
And
And
it's a racket insurance.
and it was,
really
and
is.
I didn't get the cute email.
Right.
I ain't getting none of that. I ain't getting no cuteness, nothing. They was just like, here's your new quote.
Good luck.
I'm like,
Pay it on the first.
That's right.
I'm like, is this for me?
Oh
You
my
sure
gosh.
this is for me?
You're like, my business has grown how much? What?
But those emails that we send out because we've all had to, or that we receive from different clients, because I've also received some invoices in the email saying, did you forget this? Did you overlook this? So how do you handle those emails? Sending them or receiving them? Around your prices going up or missing the payment of the invoice?
Right. Yeah. So missing the payment of the invoice doesn't happen to me too often. Again, because I typically get payment up front. Right. And then for me, if they don't pay the second half of their invoice of their website, well, then we just don't launch it. Well,
that
now I got
simple.
it. It's just
That
that simple.
simple.
Like you don't get I won't launch your website. Again, made that mistake one time.
Right.
I won't launch your website until I've gotten final payment. And I frame it in a nice way where it's like, well, you give me your final payment. We're going to do a final walkthrough, make sure everything is exactly how you need it to be
Right.
before we launch it because I want you to be okay. But first thing I said was, you're going to pay the final invoice and then we're going to
Then
go
we're
through it.
gonna
We're
go
going to make
through
sure
it,
that
then we'll
everything
launch
looks
it.
good for you, boo-boo. And then we'll launch the site.
Right.
And nobody has ever given me a hard time about it.
Right.
Really nobody, because they kind of expect.
And they want this website.
They sure do.
Right,
They sure
right,
do. And they want it fast, so they're not going to sit on it, especially at that point. Believe me, there's lots of places where it lags. And that's the most awkward with regards to pricing is that, and we have a mutual client that I have to have this conversation with where they don't respond to, I need approvals for things. So people are like, how long does it take to build a website?
It cannot be the same
Oh,
client
it's the
as
same.
mine.
It's absolutely the same. So there's not a lack of responsiveness there. They're just busy, and I get that, especially now. But that's what kind of like slows things down. So I do have a clause in our contract, and again, made this mistake a couple times until I started including this clause is if projects go dormant for X amount of days,
Right.
and a lot of times it depends on who the person is, if it's 14 or 30 days, you will incur a fee that I do not outline. I say you will incur a fee at Go Beyond's discretion. And sometimes it depends on how bad I'm mad.
Right.
So what that fee looks like.
Right.
Like, and I call it a restart fee because, and here's why. It's not just because I get grumpy about it, though I will admit I am a human and I do get grumpy about it. But the other reason why is because I only have so much bandwidth for X amount of websites. Like any websites that I'm bringing in that we're doing, I don't have a limitless amount of designers to do them. So if I have a website started, I've already earmarked that for one designer. Then I have another designer. And like, if they're churning through, great. But if it's stopped, I'm like, last thing I need is to give this designer 2 more websites. And then the third one's like, never mind, I want my website now. It's like, no.
Right.
So it gets very frustrating. People don't understand that though. They think a website can come around in 2 weeks. It can't.
Right. And it's a supply chain situation.
It's very much a supply chain.
Right?
Yes.
Like you're okay. Like I can't do my thing if this person doesn't do the thing.
That's right.
And that person doesn't do the thing. So the fact that you are not approving this, we can't move forward. Like
That's exactly right.
we're at standstill. So that has a cost
It does. It has
to
a
your
cost.
operation.
Right. And it can be extremely frustrating. So those are the harder conversations I've had to have. But usually it's not a late invoice per se. It's more of I'm going to have to charge you for acting up. It's really more it's really more like that. Because again, every service that we have, we get paid at least enough to cover our hard costs up front. Not necessarily my time but like hard costs are covered. And again, any services we provide, it's from the giddy up. So that doesn't really come into play so much. And then I'm actually a fast pay. So almost to my detriment from a cash flow perspective. I know, see the face? See the face I'm getting? Because I do like, particularly when the people that I'm paying quickly are humans I work with regularly. I want them happy. I see that in addition to the money, I see paying it quickly as an investment in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
which I know you agree.
Yeah, to me is
it's respecting their
it's
time.
respecting people's time, but like the handling of the cash flow. If you're doing business with corporation Fortune 100,
right?
If you don't pay that bill on time, they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, they're gonna be just fine.
They're gonna be just fine.
They might not even notice for a few months.
Right. There's that.
Right.
But if you are dealing with individuals who are, solopreneurs, who are self-employed, well, of course you want to make sure that you do right by them because that is their livelihood. And if you want them to continue to provide good service to you, you got to honor that relationship.
That's ballerina lessons for their kid or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not, so I am careful.
Yeah.
Because the vendors I do use almost always it's a solo. Not everybody, but it's a solo.
Yeah.
So I try to pay them fast.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Have you run into that as well, where you have, again, your situation is similar to mine in you invoice everybody?
Yeah, I one of the things that I tell people when I'm on board, when we're like, you want to do business with us? Great.
Right.
Here's how we work. And I lay it out. And one of the things that I always say in that conversation is, we're not a collection agency.
That's right.
I am not in the collection business. There is a process. And we're going to auto draft. Now, if we don't comply with the part of our agreement, I will refund you. I will do more than needs to be done to make good on the money that we've collected. But we will never go chasing you down for money. That is not the model.
Right.
And so far, I haven't had that problem.
That's really great language. We're not a collection agency. I love that, Carolina. I'm stealing that for sure.
That would be nice.
Yeah. No, I think it's.
I mean, you're in a different industry, but to me, it just became because I did have a situation where somebody did not pay for, it was not a service agreement, but it was a write-up. A write-up in accounting is when you are like doing the entire year of accounting transactions in 1 week or two because they don't have any books and they need to do taxes. That's called a write-up. So we're not going into as many details, but we have to reconcile the entire year,
Right.
however many bank accounts, credit cards, whatever.
Right.
And this one company was referred to me by an existing client that I appreciate
Right.
very much. And it's like, no, yeah, he's coming from, I'm a referral, whatever. I was like, okay, we'll do the write-up. We got the 50% deposit. Always do that. But
Right.
that second part
Never happened, huh?
never happened.
Wow.
Never happened. And so based on that experience, I was like, nope.
Right.
No more.
So we have, and I don't want to name names, but we have a mutual professional colleague in PR, and she and I were going to actually work on this particular client, and she was talking to them, and she was doing all kinds of work for them already, and this was a $1 million client, like multi-million-dollar client, and she was bringing me in to do not the PR obviously, but to do the SEO and stuff like that. And I was like, listen, the only thing I need to mention to you is like our business models, we get paid up front. And she's like, yeah, he doesn't really like to do that. And I'm like, so that's cool, but that's not going to work for us. Like I can't repossess. Well, he never paid her. And Caroline, I know you know the story. She was in court on and off for over a year. And she was out hundreds of thousands of dollars in labor and the rest of it.
It was a nightmare.
It was an absolute nightmare. I felt very bad for her. And it was a cautionary tale. And I was glad I had the wherewithal to stick to my guns and say, we get paid up front. And that's why. $1 million.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Oh no, it was insane. I know
you were working
I
with
was
her on
privy
that.
to the situation,
Right.
and my heart went, for her, because I had seen the work that she was doing and her team was doing, and then to see that this person was the responses that she was getting were so
Talk about an awkward conversation.
disrespectful.
Oh my God, so bad.
So disrespectful. I was like, I'm glad I'm not like that.
From the owner?
Yes, from her client, and it was like
she was very cordial in the beginning, as you are. You're very professional, very cordial, and you try to outline. So here's this next steps, blah blah, and then the lawyers got involved, and then it's not. Talk about awkward conversations. I think her lawyer was knee deep in awkward conversations at that point.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
for sure.
So to kind of put a fine point on all this, what do you think of the most awkward conversation you've had, professionally speaking? Because I think some of my conversations privately were probably equally, if not more, awkward. I'm just curious.
Yeah, on a personal level.
Yeah, on a personal level, there's definitely been some rough ones.
Yeah. For me, definitely with employees, because you have to see them every day.
That's right.
Or if you don't see them because you're not physically with them, they're still part of your world.
Right.
And so having those difficult conversations and having to set the boundaries for people that are not your children,
Right.
it's really awkward.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most uncomfortable. How about you, Brenda?
We hired a lady who didn't realize that I was the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about to come out of character, and then I just winged it back.
Right.
And tried to explain to her what her job was and what she did or lack thereof for the company.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to let you answer your own questions. So I said,
right.
what have you done in the last 30 days? Nothing. Have you made us any money in the last 30 days? No. Have you made any placements in the last 30 days? No. So then you're really not helping me at all, but so you can leave. What is it? So I think I changed my awkward conversations to ask questions so they can answer them themselves, and then they see.
That's a really great tactic.
And they see,
I like it.
They see that their value, if it's
Right.
any there, and if it's not, then bye.
Right.
So I think that's just how my way of doing it, and I got that from Kay. He does that all the time, even to me. He asks questions, and when you get the answer, and you're like, you just caught me up. Didn't you?
Yeah.
But I do it with a straight face.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I would say the most awkward one for me crossed the line into personal because, and I know we'll talk about this in another.
Yes.
Because we can dedicate 72 podcasts to this one, but with someone who worked for me that also shares a bloodline with me.
Oh,
So,
ooh,
yeah,
we
so-
gotta.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of family members. I've had more than a couple of family members, and again, I founded the company with my. The company was actually founded with my husband and with my brother-in-law, my husband's brother. And though my husband's brother doesn't work for the company anymore, it was never awkward. It was not for cause. It wasn't for anything like that. And we love him, still see him. He lives, not far from us and stuff like that. He's delightful and has a wonderful job doing his own thing. I did have some other family members, and there was one in particular, and it's all water under the bridge, so I won't get into too much detail. But when my husband had discovered that some of the work that he was doing, that we were being, he was an hourly employee and we were charged by the hour. And we can tell based on the work that he was doing that he had not been in there.
Right.
So we're getting charged for hours that work was not being done. And he was living with us at the time for free. So, so it got real. So that, once I realized that, my husband's like, I'll talk to him. I'm like, no. This one's on me because he's my blood. So I'll talk to him. And, lots of apologies. This was a very long time ago. But talk about an awkward conversation. Because on the one hand, I'm embarrassed because of my relationship with my husband. On the second hand, I'm like hot, ready to punch somebody in the throat over this mess. I'm like, this fool's living in my house eating my bread and I'm beating you. Like, what? And it's funny because he's also very tall. So I'm like ready, I'm gonna kick your butt. And of course, he was in a very, he's much better now. He's in a dark place. He was kind of lost and whatever, which was part of why we were helping him out, but he was not helping himself out. There was way more to that conversation too. There was other stuff that happened too. But I do think that we should dedicate an episode to working with family because that is, it definitely gets tricky. Yeah. But that was probably professionally one of the hardest challenges I ever had to overcome and I let him go. I had to let him go.
Yeah.
And then charged him rent.
Oh, no, that's right. You still got to pay.
Yeah, it was tough. That was a tough one. It makes me choke up just thinking about it actually. But yeah, right. I mean, I guess that was a good one. Man, we had a lot of topics.
Yeah.
A lot of topics there.
So bottom line, rip off the Band-Aid.
Rip off the Band-Aid, make it fast.
And just make it fast, have that conversation and be done with it.
Yeah.
Go in with the plan, know your key points, anticipate their reaction. And I think we said it before, be clear.
Clear is
always
huge.
Be clear.
Yeah, clear is huge. It is the cornerstone of all communication, is just to be clear. We all try to be clever. We try to be cute. But in the absence of clear, clever and cute just gets lost.
Right.
Cut to the chase and get it done.
Remember, difficult conversations don't ruin relationships. Bad communication does.
Ooh.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Brenda, seriously. I need that on a bumper sticker. I might do. So
can we put that on merch on the side?
And Brenda Harris available for life coaching.
Oh no.
Okay, right. So ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap this up. If you have a horror story, because I know we have more to share, but we would love to hear from you too. If you've had to have a tough conversation, we could be like Reddit, like AITA. Am I the professional asshole for doing XYZ? If you do, drop a comment or just let us know, because we do love a good business war story, right, ladies?
Absolutely.
Know that you are not alone. If you're going through it right now, just know that we have been there. We completely get it too, and we would love to hear. That's part of the community that we're building here. And also remember, please share, follow, and subscribe to Breaking Even Better.
That's right.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Breaking Even Better podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content. To connect with our podcast or any of us individually, make sure you head to the show notes for all the links you need. See you in the next episode.